Neil is one of the students at a very tough private school called Welton. His dad is set on Neil studying diligently in order to become a doctor without any regard for Neil's own dream or what he wants to do, which is to become an actor. And a chance comes up for Neil to play Puck in a nearby production of Midsummer Night's Dream, so despite his father's strict instructions, Neil decides to take part in the performance, thinking his dad is supposed to be out of town, so shouldn't find out anyway. And he performs, and he's very good, but halfway through his dad does turn up and waits for him after it's all finished. And his dad isn't swayed at all by Neil's good performance, and drives him straight home, where he then tells Neil he's going to be transferred to a military school the following day, and that he can forget about acting because it's over. However, Neil leaves his room and commits suicide. At this point in the film, it's winter and snow is falling, which is an obvious signal for the coming tragedy and the bitterness of life that the characters of this film are about to face with Neil's death. What's interesting though about it is that during the winter, Midsummer Night's Dream is the play being performed, a play the title explicitly points to as being more midsummer, not winter. It's not an obvious wintry choice, so why out of all the Shakespeare plays did the writers or director decide to go with this over, say, A Winter's Tale? And what makes it fitting for this film is that the play is set at night in the woods where the world of dreams takes over reality. There are fairies and magic about that cause all sorts of trouble for the main characters who have stumbled into the woods. It's a play about dreams in that sense, hence its title. And this, in many ways, is a film about dreams, about following your passion and what excites you in life, what makes you feel alive. What makes you feel most alive can often be found in dreams. Where in the play we see them stumble off into the woods and discover the magic of fairies, the film shows us the Dead Poets Society members stumbling off into a cave and discovering the magic of poetry and passion. The point is, all of that is a world away from reality, or the ordinary mundane routines of daily life. Not just physically in the setting of the woods or the cave that's miles away from Welton, but emotionally. Passion and life has to be found outside of that dull, daily monotony. That's where you can truly discover yourself. That's what makes Midsummer Night's Dream a fitting play, and all the more for Neil, who has to step outside of his very rigid life of study and strict parents who deny him every excitement to actually discover who he is and who he wants to be, which is an actor. But it's just a dream in the play. The dream ends and morning will come and everybody will wake into the dull monotony again. The play ends with Puck delivering a fitting monologue that Neil addresses indirectly to his dad.
If we shadows have offended, think but this and all is mended, that you have but slumbered here while these visions did appear, and this weak and idle theme no more yielding but a dream. Gentles, do not reprehend. If you pardon, we will mend. And as I am an honest Puck, if we have unearned luck, now to escape the serpent's tongue, we will make amends ere long. Else the Puck a liar call. So good night unto you all. Give me your hands if we be friends. And Robin shall restore amends.
You know, he's saying, don't be angered by the play, by the performance. It was nothing more than a dream, and now that the dream's over, we can make amends. And there's two things wrong here, really. First, nothing but an idle dream is exactly how Neil's dad sees the whole thing, this whole acting business, as he calls it. And secondly, this speech that Puck gives, or Neil gives at the end of the play, is kind of everything Neil shouldn't be telling his dad, in a way. Where what Neil needs to be doing is telling his dad exactly how he feels. Mr. Keating points that out earlier in the film. Neil has to tell his dad how much acting means to him, that he's been wanting to do it his entire life. There's no other way. The problem is, he's afraid of his father. Even in the positioning as he gives the monologue, his dad is higher up. Despite Neil literally being on a stage, his dad still has the imposing high ground. Because it does matter. Idle dream or not, you take your dreams with you into the waking world, or the good ones anyway. When the characters in Midsummer Night's Dream wake up, things aren't exactly restored just the way they were before, because they have an impact. And the Dead Poets Society meetings have an impact for the kids. It all matters, and Neil needs to tell his dad that, but just as the monologue here foreshadows, Neil never does. Anyway, let's analyse this scene a bit, because that's what I said I was going to do. The first shot here is this table. The picture they have on the table is of Neil in his school uniform, standing before Welton, looking all smart and proud, because that's sort of what Neil is to his dad. Not a son, but this hard-working student, this image. He's less a son than a set of grades. We've also got alcohol and cigarettes though, and the camera follows this trail of smoke upwards. Smoke we'll later see over Neil's body, and we realise it's his mum standing there, anxiously smoking while she waits for Neil and his dad to get home. And she's quite sympathetic to Neil in this scene and in other points of the film, but just as the alcohol and cigarettes suggest, she's nervous. She's also afraid, or at least lacks the fortitude to challenge her husband to defend Neil. She's afraid of doing that. Seeing them coming, she puts out the cigarette and positions herself in her chair. You know, she's not rising to meet them, to face up to them, she's sinking back into the chair. You know, just in the physicality there's something quite submissive. Dad lays down the law and no one can dare question it. And so Neil also sinks into the seat opposite. And it's kind of weird when you consider there are only 2 seats here for a family of 3. It's like this is their usual seating arrangement. Mum and Neil sit in the 2 chairs whilst Dad stands powerfully in the middle.
We're trying very hard to understand why it is that you insist on defying us.
Not why you're so determined to perform in plays. It's as though he thinks the intention behind it all was just to defy.
Whatever the reason, we're not going to let you ruin your life.
He leaves no pause here for Neil to explain the reason. He doesn't care what the reason is really, it's all that matters is you've defied me, Neil.
Tomorrow I'm withdrawing you from Welton and enrolling you in Braden Military School. You're going to Harvard and you're going to be a doctor.
Neil looks to his mum for support, who looks away.
But that's 10 more years. Father, that's a lifetime!
Oh, stop it! Don't be so dramatic. You make it sound like a prison term.
But I think he's missing what bothers Neil here. It's not the fact that military school will feel like a prison to him, 10 more years in a horrible place. It's that 10 years will have passed before Neil can actually start doing what he wants to do with his life. He'll be getting old then. His chance to act professionally may have already passed him at that age. It's not that it's a hard 10 years that's the issue, it's that those years are crucial years lost for good.
You don't understand, Neil.
Says the man who hasn't tried to understand his son at all.
You have opportunities that I never even dreamt of.
Which obviously aren't the opportunities Neil wants. The ones he wants are out there on the stage. This is what's called living vicariously through your children. When Neil's dad was young, there was probably stuff he wanted to do with his life, but his dad never let him, and he never really got the chance later on. It left him cold and bitter, so A, he lives out those hopes through his son, and B, takes out his anger on his son. He never had a proper childhood because his dad spent it pushing him around, so now he'll spend Neil's childhood pushing him around as an indirect means of getting back at his own father. At least that's how I see it.
Then I am not going to let you
I've
waste
got
them.
to tell you what I feel!
I've been so worried
What?
about...
Tell me what you feel!
But he doesn't. He freezes. Fear stops him. And that's when Neil realises the chance is gone. The one chance he has to live a life is already gone. He sits back down. To him, it feels over. He clutches tight to his crown like it's the one thing he has left of the person he truly feels himself to be, deep down. His mum comes to him but positions herself behind. The framing here has Neil looking forwards dreamily, as though looking out towards his dead hopes, while his mum, and technically his dad also, who already left the room behind him, are dragging him backwards, pulling his life in the opposite direction. The fact she's positioned behind though, the fact they never make eye contact here, also tells you that they can't reach each other anymore.
I was good. I was really good.
Go on, get some sleep.
You know, that's it. She doesn't kiss him, doesn't pat him on the back, or tell him she's sorry, doesn't hug him or anything. Because they can't reach each other. He's out of reach now. Neil has kind of already died. So his parents go to bed and there's this zoomed in shot on Dad's slippers. But Neil stays up. He's in his room and he prepares himself for death. And we have this shot with his crown in the foreground, a symbol of his life or his hopes or who he wanted to be, and his shadow in the background. Either that's his death looming over, or it's the person he's forced to be, the role he's forced to play as a dutiful son.
You're playing the part of the dutiful son.
The shadow of his true self. And there are two parts to his death, essentially. First, he stands topless by an open window with the crown on, looking out at the snow. I watched the film years ago and I remembered Neil kills himself, but I couldn't remember how, so watching it again I got to this bit and I thought, okay, he's going to go out in the snow with his crown on, with no shirt, and freeze to death, like Puck disappearing off into the night. You know, symbolically in terms of the film it would be fitting in many ways, but that isn't how he dies. Because he just stands there for a bit, then takes off the crown and moves away. Which instead makes this moment feel as though he's savouring one last chance to be Puck, to be the talented actor, to feel like that. You know, he wants to be out there in the world of magic and dreams, but he's wrenched back. We'll instead see that he dies in his father's study, by his father's gun, symbolically killed by his father. And there's something very ritualistic about his death as well. The music playing, the fact he's topless and barefoot, he's mostly a silhouette as well, which perhaps adds to the idea of the shadow of his true self. He holds the key to his dad's desk drawer like it's something sacred, the gun is wrapped in cloth like a ceremonial dagger. Just somehow it feels less like a suicide than a sacrifice. And as bleak as it is to discuss, there are a lot of different ways people can kill themselves. The method they choose normally means something. Because he needed to tell his dad what he felt, and he couldn't. He wasn't brave enough. As a result, Neil feels like suicide is the only remaining way of telling his dad how he feels. It's like a message to his father as much as anything else. Acting meant everything to me. Without it, you've destroyed my life. I can't live. Because this is the thing, when you have a terrible rage that you have to suppress, that you're too afraid to dare show, you turn it inwards, which could then mean attacking yourself instead, letting it explode inside you, in a sense, which means things like self-harm, or in this case suicide. So in that sense, it's not just he killed himself because he felt his life was over, it's also that he did it because he felt there was no other way to get the message across to his dad. And in some ways that's the tragedy of this. If someone isn't given a voice to express their feelings, they can then turn those feelings inwards against themselves and do something drastic. And then that's it. His dad wakes up thinking he heard a noise that we never actually hear ourselves. All we get is the music stopping. And then they find Neil. Crucially, we don't really see his body apart from his hand. You know, the person Neil is, the real person, is lost, unseen behind his dad's desk, behind this symbol of the life of his father's work, strict discipline. Neil himself is invisible. And then we watch from outside the room as they embrace their son. We are distanced from Neil again. Everything is distanced from Neil now because he's dead. He's gone. All that truly remains of him now is that crown. That's the last image of the real him. And also, did he get his message across to his father? Because his dad holds him and says,
Oh, my son! My son, my poor son!
As though finally actually seeing him as a human being rather than a set of grades and a career. So maybe he does. Equally, if you consider the rest of the film, the fact Mr. Keating is blamed, the fact acting remains to be seen not as important to Neil, but as some mad obsession that derailed him, maybe it doesn't get across. And that would be bleak to think. The next scene is the others telling Todd that he's dead. And we get this shot in the snow where Todd essentially runs out searching for Neil, as though he'll find him out there in the snow, out where Neil wanted to be. Except he isn't there. He died in the study, away from the outside world of dreams and Puck and the Dead Poets Society. And this scene with Todd made me cry when I saw it. He's the only one with his hood down, not caring about the cold, but letting it hit him in full force, letting the emotion hit him in full force. And then he sinks down into the snow and even has it pressed into his mouth. And he then runs further off into it, alone, his best friend gone forever. And we then get a shot of the others again. Now another two have their hoods down and the music comes in. I think it's a clarinet, it might be a flute, but it plays that main triumphant theme, but now it's sad and lost and forlorn. And this shot here is kind of the breaking of the fellowship. Losing a friend like that, such a close one. If there was ever a time where friends mean the most and where a sense of fellowship is real, it's during school. It's the friendship between the lot of them that helped them to survive at Welton long before Mr. Keaton came along, and this is its breaking. Neil's gone forever, and you can't even begin to imagine the sadness all of them will now suffer. How they're supposed to keep up with schoolwork, I don't know. Neil's gone, and Nwanda will shortly be expelled, and Cameron will turn on them. And I was going to say more. I was going to talk about the assembly given in Neil's honour, where he is described as nothing more than
a fine student. One of Welton's best.
You know, no mention of the real person or any of the things that mattered to him. But I think it's best to finish now with two final points, one sad and the last one a bit more hopeful. We get this shot of the 5 Centuries of Verse book, showing the opening to be read at the start of every Dead Poets Society meeting, and the end of it reads, "To put to rout all that was not life, and not, when I came to die, discover I had not lived." And those powerful words meant something different earlier in the film. Now they're turned on their heads because Neil has not yet lived. He died when his life had barely begun. He was only just starting to discover what life was, and then it was over for him. And now the hopeful point. That sad little melody on the clarinet will return again at the end of this film in full triumphant force, because the broken fellowship will repair. Neil is gone but not forgotten. Nwanda may be expelled, but that may also be better in terms of living his life. The rest stand firm and loyal with their captain, and that's how the film ends. And you feel like there could be a scene after, but there isn't. It ends slap bang with the moment of triumph and hope, and the class standing together, standing over their school desks, their studies, standing high with passion, looking at life from a different perspective, just as Mr. Keaton taught them, as free thinkers. And that's the note the film ends on. It's that triumph that gets the very last word in this film, so the tragedy does not destroy them. Though Mr. Keaton is sacked, his work wasn't for nothing. He leaves a permanent mark in all those kids. Discipline does not win out over passion and innovation in this film. The Dead Poets Society wins, passion wins, free thinkers win. They have the final moment of triumph, and the music confirms it.
Thank you, boys. Thank you.
A special thank you goes to my Big Fortree patron, Brian Neubert. Thank you so much for your support.